I can't believe you said that. He is clearly a better Spider-Man.
Okay, look, I could maybe see you saying a better Peter Parker, maybe. But there's no way he's a better Spider-Man. I mean, he doesn't have the right body type, he doesn't make with the witty quips.
I totally disagree. And as for being a better Peter Parker, I mean, Tobey Maguire was wrong completely. I mean, he didn't even make his own web shooters.
Whoa. You're saying that Garfield's a better Spider-Man?
Yes!
So was I.
Man, we have to stop jumping into arguments halfway through.
Yeah, we do.
It just makes no sense.
The camera comes on and we
crazy.
just go. You know what? This goes to show you, though, reboots will always cause arguments, even if they're stupid ones. So we're going to take a look at some of the notable reboots that have happened to our favourite wall crawler over the years.
Indeed. Now, we will start by saying we are looking at storylines, so there will be spoilers. Don't say we didn't warn you.
With that in mind, one of the biggest shake-ups in the Spideyverse of late has come with the advent of the superior Spider-Man.
The lead-up to Amazing Spider-Man issue 700 was also the lead-up to a pretty massive event in the Marvel Universe. The death of Spider-Man. For realsies this time.
Well, kind of.
Yeah.
After Dr. Octopus manages to steal Peter Parker's body, leaving his longtime nemesis trapped in his own dying form, we are launched into a tense race against time as Peter tries to get his own body back. Ultimately, he fails, although with the Pyrrhic victory of instilling his power and responsibility rule in his old enemy.
It was a risky move for writer Dan Slott, and a lot of readers were horrified as Otto Octavius started brutalising bad guys and dating Mary Jane. But by the end of the first issue of Superior, we know that Peter Parker may not be gone for good. It ends up being a pretty awesome read.
Now, from the sublime to the ridiculous, we need to look at a rather dark time in the history of Spider-Man. A time when reboots failed to boot. A time of clones.
No, we're not going to talk about Clone Saga.
I'm sorry, but we're talking about reboots. We pretty much have to.
Okay, but keep it brief.
Well, I'll try, but it's hard with an event that went for almost 2 years. It all started in 1975, when Professor Miles Warren, aka the Jackal, created clones of both Gwen Stacy and Spider-Man. During a pitched battle, the clone of Spidey was killed in an explosion. Except that he wasn't.
Yeah, because in 1994, a guy that looks a hell of a lot like Peter Parker shows up, calling himself Ben Reilly. And it turns out that the clone never died and has been doing his own thing this entire time. The original idea was actually pretty cool. It was going to turn out that Riley was the real Spider-Man and Peter Parker was actually the clone.
Unfortunately, the saga was kind of a victim of its own popularity, and in an attempt to wring more sales out of it, they extended the concept way past its original premise, requiring clone after clone and retcon after retcon just to keep it going.
Yeah.
It ended up an overblown mess that made no sense and is remembered as one of the biggest mistakes in comics.
Yeah, so as far as being a reboot, well, actually wasn't one. The idea of Riley taking over as Spider-Man and Parker getting to retire was scrapped, along with the idea that Riley was the original Spider-Man. Again, this was changed in a way that made no sense whatsoever.
Yes, now moving on, gratefully,
Yes.
we come to another kind of reboot, but this time one that works extremely well. Spider-Man Reign, created by Kari Andrews with Jose Villarrubia.
Yeah, it's more of a dark possible future or a what if rather than a reboot, but it does take a look at Spidey in a new way, kind of reminiscent of Frank Miller's Dark Knight Returns.
Yeah.
In future New York, Peter Parker has retired from his wall-crawling ways and has succumbed to old age, as the city he loved has likewise decayed and fallen into corruption around him.
It's pretty grim, isn't it? The Daily Bugle has become a propaganda machine, heavily armed militia types patrol the streets beating up anyone who crosses their path, and something horrible is lurking behind the seat of government. It's only a matter of time before Peter gets pulled back into the conflict.
There are some heartbreaking moments in this book, as well as some great action, and even a few laughs. Because what would Spider-Man be without a few wisecracks?
Tobey Maguire?
Oh, that guy is getting a real pounding in this episode. He wasn't that bad.
No, he wasn't. And you know, it's hard to take up the mantle of such a beloved character
Yeah.
as Peter Parker. So, let's take a look at a couple of reboots where someone else ends up doing whatever a spider can. Beginning with a young man named Miguel O'Hara in Spider-Man 2099.
Of the number of characters reimagined for the Marvel 2099 lineup, Spider-Man was probably the most popular. A brilliant geneticist working for a corrupt mega corporation, Miguel gains superpowers when his DNA gets altered and he becomes 50% spider. So, in addition to strength, agility, and spider senses, he undergoes a physical change as well.
Yes, including fanged teeth, talons on his fingers and toes, which are handy for wall climbing but quite awkward if you're on a date, and red eyes that are sensitive to the light.
Miguel also has a different personality to Peter Parker. I mean, he starts off quite arrogant and self-serving, still witty, but with a sarcastic, cynical edge.
Absolutely, but it's not that long before the power and responsibility equation occurs to it.
Yeah.
There's actually quite a nice character journey over this title's 46 issues, 44 of which were written by Peter David. There were a lot of fans that were actually sad to see this title end.
Yeah, which was why it was exciting to see Miguel pop up again in Superior Spider-Man recently.
Absolutely, and with David returning as writer for a new Spidey 2099 series, there has never been a better time to catch up on the original run and bring yourself up to speed.
That's right, but now for our final rebooted and resuited Spider-Man on the block. Ultimate Comic Spider-Man, Miles Morales. When the Peter Parker of the Ultimates universe died during a fight with Green Goblin, there was fortunately already a new web-slinger ready to step into the breach.
Call it luck, call it fate, call it prudent editorial planning. But Miles Morales was bitten by a radioactive spider sometime before Peter's death, and developed a range of powers including camouflage and a venom strike ability, in addition to the usual cocktail of strength, agility, and sticking to things.
I thought it was a neat bit of plotting that Miles becomes a superhero due to his guilt over the death of Spider-Man, thinking that if he had used his powers sooner, he might have actually saved him.
Yeah, it's a nice way of instilling that sense of overriding guilt that every good Spider-Man should have.
And Miles is proving to be a very fine Spider-Man indeed. He's just a kid trying to juggle high school and saving the world while making jokes to keep himself sane. And this is the best kind of reboot because we have an entirely different character with an entirely different background, but all the things that we love about Spider-Man are still there. So there's just a few titles. I hope we've given you some ideas to look out for.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to future reboots and future reimaginings of the character because, I mean, if for nothing else, imagine all the potential spider powers there are out there. I mean, for example, do you know there's this one European spider where after the mother sort of lays her eggs, she looks after the newborn babies for 2 weeks and then they eat her.
Yeah, I can't see that getting into the comics.
Yeah, Marvel have started returning my letters unopened.
That's because you put spiders in them.
It's a visual aid.
People died.
Just an intern.